Florida State, Miami, Clemson, all coming to the Big 12. That's what one message board warrior says is on the way and best for sports. This is a Locked On Big 12, Locked On Cyclones crossover.
You are Locked On Big 12, your daily podcast on the Big 12 Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Wednesday, everybody. Welcome to a Locked On Big 12, Locked On Cyclones crossover. I'm Drake Toll from America's #1 Big 12 podcast, Locked On Big 12. That's Nick Maravats talking all things Iowa State on Locked On Cyclones. Thank you for making these two shows your first listen every single day. We will start Florida State, Clemson in the Big 12. That's what one message board warrior says should come soon to fix college football and make a Power 3. We'll then get into, there's a reason we're starting with that. So we can give Nick 10 minutes to process whatever happened to Iowa State and whether or not the Cyclones are dead. It feels like half their players are at least incapacitated at this point. What is the future for TJ Otzelberger's team? Then we'll finish BYU, Houston, Arizona, Texas Tech. Who's the best team in the Big 12 right now? Who's got the best shot to make a run in March Madness? Nick, this is a great, I love good keyboard warrior. Winter Knoll says to warchant.com, my thoughts, anything but the ACC. Florida State, Miami, Clemson, Virginia Tech head to the Big 12, make 20 teams. FSU and Clemson replace Oklahoma and Texas. We're kind of back where we were a couple of years ago, but we also have like a BYU and Utah and the like. So there's an East, there's a West. You bury the ACC. There's a 3 or 4 playoff slot shakeout for the Big 12, the SEC, and the Big 10. You get ESPN to decrease the ACC payout, increase the Big 12's payout, and bam, we have a Power 3. This fan says the schedule would be substantially better, and Florida State wouldn't have to worry about extinction being based on the SEC and the Big 10. Look, if we're going to save college football, and you're a Big 12 fan, you should be actively rooting for, any way possible, the Big 12 staying alive. And creating a Power 3 with the Big 12 at the center of it alongside Florida State and Clemson would kind of freaking rock.
I agree, actually. I'm curious. Does this mean then that the ACC would be they'd be like a G6, like a G5, but they'd be the 6th?
Ooh.
Like what happens to them?
Yeah,
because
then they still have SMU, right? And Stanford, right. And they would still have Cal, but from there, they can stay alive. The idea was if they could keep it at 14 teams, their grant of rights doesn't change. That's why they did the whole Stanford, Cal, SMU move. But with this, there's no way they would get the respect with Wake Forest leading the way. I think North Carolina would then exit as well, and other schools that feel like they have real brands in sports would exit, like Syracuse, Boston College. We can't survive off that.
No, and if UNC or Duke left, there's nothing there. Those are the two teams that are left. So, if you think the Big 12 is getting disrespect right now, or the ACC right now, if this were to happen, just no respect at all for the ACC. Now, that being said, obviously look then to what the Big 12 would be, and I actually kind of like it. Then do you even out the auto bids between the Big 12, Big 10, and the SEC? I think that's a fair way to look at it, considering it's effectively now a boosted Big 12, and you've got some quote-unquote blue bloods in Miami and FSU in there as far as marketing goes, value there. And then if you go to so let's say 3 each. Okay, I know it's not the 4 that the Big 10 and the ACC want, but let's say 3 each, and then you go to 14 teams and you have 2 at-large bids. I don't hate that. It's pretty even across the conferences there.
Yeah, or you do if you go to 16 and they give them 4.
Yeah.
The SEC gets 4, the Big 12 gets 4, and the Big 10 gets 4. At that point, there are 4 at-larges for what's left of the ACC, this new Pac-12 they're creating, the AAC, will Memphis be there's so many questions of how college football would recuperate if the ACC is no longer a power league, but I would rather be asking the question, how does college football stay alive because the Big 12 is a newfound Power 3 power, then ask the question, how does the Big 12 stay alive when the SEC and the Big 10 decide to take over the entire domain and make it's tough to assimilate to this, but for the sake of staying alive, for the sake of keeping Iowa State, for the sake of keeping Baylor or keeping UCF alive in a power conference, if this is what's necessary to allow the Big 12 to not just survive, but legitimately thrive in college football, I think I'm for it.
I agree. I don't know if this is something. I just don't want the Big 12 to essentially be the cockroach, right? Where they're hanging along, they're survived. They've been around for, I don't know even how long have been Sharks been around? Something like
A
that.
long time.
I want them to. I know, and alligators too, apparently.
And like a cockroach, a nuclear bomb won't kill it, but a shoe could, and that's
Could.
always that's when you're
Right.
like, oh
Do you
shoot.
want to be in that position? I don't think so. So
No.
I think where I'm sitting right now, granted, I'm not Brent Yormark, but I do think we need
Are we
to
a cock?
attack
How are we the cockroach? Walk me through this metaphor.
the Big 12 right now compared to the Big 10 and the SEC. I mean, there's levels here. I'm sorry.
Right.
I don't want
Okay.
it either. There's
Yeah.
certainly levels. I mean, the Big 10 and the SEC are making all of the calls. And if you're just going to sit back seat, you're just the theory with the cockroach really here is that you're taking a back seat, you're surviving. We want to attack, right? So
I've met plenty of cockroaches that attack, by the way. But where I would see this is like
people to not be in that position.
Texas, Oklahoma leave. That's your nuclear bomb. You survive.
Yeah.
You survive the nuclear bomb. But the second that dad or mom, the SEC and Big Ten, want to step on you with their shoe, that is when you ultimately would die. There's fragility. With what the Big 12 is going through right now.
I just think, whatever it is that the Big 12 has to do you partner up with the ACC and somehow swindle your way into SEC, Big 10, winner of that plays ACC, Big 12? Do we get creative here? Is there a way to keep it completely relevant? Or are you completely okay with essentially going from one auto bid to two to the Big 10 and SEC's two or whatever to four, right? And I don't love taking that backseat approach. Okay, we went from one to two auto bids. We completely got disrespected in that. I don't love that. Let's find something here where we can actually make some noise.
Yes. And the Big 12 has continually, from a national standpoint, taken a back seat to the SEC and the Big 10 for the powers that be that don't want to see this conference. Again, thrive is the right word. It's the idea that the SEC and the Big 10 can do that. And yeah, you look, it's some random message board guy who's like, you know what? Here's my idea. The ACC falls apart and the Big 12 has 20 teams now with blue bloods like Florida State and Clemson. Do you think ultimately, though, that those four teams, if it is Florida State, Miami, Clemson, Virginia Tech, could anchor the Big 12 to have the same weight as the SEC and the Big 10?
Well, I'd actually be more curious to see what the SEC and Big 10 do in not retaliation, but in response to a movement like that.
Yeah.
Look at what happened to the Pac-12 movement, just out the wazoo. So you gain a couple of teams here, be it these four or maybe a mixed bag of whatever actually happens in this hypothetical scenario. But then what happens with the Big 10 and the SEC, and how much do they get a bump out of that, right? That's really where the question lies, because I don't think you can realistically say the Big 12 is only going to get four and nobody else is going to go to the Big 10 or the SEC in this scenario, right? There's going to be domino effect, and I don't think the boost will be enough. But then you're left with a power three, and there's no real other option.
Yeah. If it keeps the Big 12 alive, I am ultimately for it, even if it means the demise of the ACC. Sorry, I don't host Locked On ACC. I host Locked On Big 12. I don't want to keep it that way. Coming up, Iowa State hoops. Is it time to eulogize the 2024-25 season, or is a resurgence on the way for Otts and company? This is a Locked On Big 12, Locked On Cyclones crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Hey, today's show brought to you by FanDuel. FanDuel is exactly where I go when I'm like, you know what? I'm going to make some money. Sometimes that's betting against Iowa State. Sometimes it's betting for them on the basketball floor. When the game tips off in the NBA or college basketball, FanDuel, it's America's #1 sportsbook, and there's no place better to get in on that action. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game. Even if you miss opening tip-off, you want a fourth quarter comeback, stay in on the action. You can even combine live bets into a same-game parlay. I love FanDuel's live betting because it keeps every moment exciting, whether I'm backing my team for a late-game rally or picking a player to hit a clutch three. I never feel like I miss my chance. Right now, new FanDuel customers get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Nick Maravets of Locked On Cyclones. Iowa State loses to Oklahoma State, which, to be honest with you, just isn't very good. I think Steve Lutz and company will be good in the coming years. This year is not one of those. They now improved to 6-11 in Big 12 play. Iowa State falls to 11-6, 21-7 overall. But as the comeback came short, it was very apparent. Iowa State still has some gas in the tank, but when the Cyclones aren't at full strength, this team is not what we saw in that win on the road against Texas Tech or that pummeling win at home against Kansas. This is a very different Iowa State squad, and that 4-game win streak was pretty, but all of a sudden it feels so far long in the distance. Wow. It's hard to mute yourself, and there you go. I think
Sorry, I went for your ad read. I was like, I'm going to give him the space. This one hurt, dude. I'm not going to lie. This one might be the worst loss in TJ Otts's run. There certainly have been worse losses in the past, and this one's really for my Iowa State listeners out there. This is Iowa State in a nutshell, just getting hurt this bad, and we'll bounce back, and we'll have our hopes way too high and give it a couple days. But right now, I am completely torn between what could be argued as depression and also pure outrage. This is not the team that is Final Four caliber that we've talked about all season. And I'll go obviously more in depth on that when I feel like I've recovered from this. But right now, it was atrocious. And I don't know if we're here to talk just this game or if you want to talk the season as a whole, because the things used to be so bright, but 18 turnovers. I mean, it was a sloppy game. And this is one of those where this is how I felt about Kansas State when they came up to Ames. It's tough to get up for a team that you're supposed to just lay it on. You're just not. It's not supposed to be close. In the Kansas State game, obviously, that was with the home, the atmosphere and everything in that as well. You're without a Keyshawn Gilbert against Oklahoma State, but you're still supposed to dominate, and it's just not there. I get it, but you can't lose this one. And now it is a question of where are we? What is going on here? Because this is not the team we've seen in the past.
Looking at the stat sheet from this game and even watching it, it was, okay, Iowa State, albeit down, can come back and win because Oklahoma State is shooting 26% from three. They finished 6 for 23 on the evening. Iowa State out rebounds Oklahoma State in this game as well, but you hit the nail on the head. 24-10. The Pokes over the Cyclones when it comes to points off of turnovers, and maybe the most damning thing that I always point to, 12 for 20 for Iowa State at the free throw line. That's not going to get it done.
Say. That was what I was going to ask you. What was our conversion rate at the line? That's 8 points that you leave on the board. How much did you lose by? 6.
Yeah.
And obviously that's going to change the out course of the game, like how it's played out. But man, that you just can't do that. And this team had been shooting so well from the line recently. And now, obviously, you want to talk about that 4-game win streak. Those are some, I'm not going to call them bad opponents, but they're not the top of the Big 12. And we've been talking all year about how is the Big 12 down in basketball right now. And that is that is 100% because of the teams on the bottom half. And I'm not trying to take any shots here, but the top of the top this season has been very, very good in the Big 12. And so you get those 4 wins and you feel like you've built momentum. This is one after, I mean, it's just how we got to get something moving here. This is the end of the season. This is the time to get momentum. I don't know what this is about.
Yeah, looking at the list of wins there, TCU, UCF on the road, Cincinnati, and Colorado. When you say that's the bottom half of the conference, you're right. The only pushback I'd give is so is Oklahoma State. You know, I mean,
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, like you win those 4. You know, how do you lose this one as an 11.5-point favorite?
The argument is without Keyshawn, and Curtis is maybe still getting over the illness, and it's hard to run up and down the floor with effectively starter minutes. Look, if you're not going to be at 100%, I said this.
Chilovich went like 22 minutes, I think. Even he was just not. I mean, you got to give him time, but still.
Yeah, I just so yeah, those 4 wins, you're full strength effectively there. And then the Houston game, no Keyshawn, no Curtis. We're kind of playing from below the belt here. We're trying to fight up, if you will. And that one, it was like, okay, this team's really, really good without 2 of their starters. I think that's where this team plays best. And I absolutely hate that. And it feels like that's been the history of Iowa State for forever. But anytime this team has to play from a favorite position, it's tough. And so I do kind of like, with this loss, Iowa State probably falling out of the top 10. And does that hurt recruitment with the streak now snapped? Maybe. But now this team has absolutely nothing going in their favor. You don't have the home win streak. You don't have the top 10 streak. Who's on the floor? This is a completely different team than it's been all year, and you're at a way worse spot, especially with this now loss streak, and you had the 3-game loss streak earlier. This team now, no momentum, like I said, but has the opportunity to surprise us, which is where I do think they strike best.
Yeah, effective blowouts against Arizona, Kansas State, and Kansas. That was now like a month ago for Iowa State in that 3-game losing stretch. And I thought at that point, oh, things could get really bad. Then you recover, win 4 in a row, and now you've built another losing streak with Arizona, BYU, and Kansas State on the docket. Kansas State looks much more dangerous than they have all year long, and you lost to them at home by 19 points. You have to go on the road to face the Wildcats. These next two coming against top 25 opponents in the Wildcats and the Cougars, then the Wildcats of Kansas State.
Hey, I'm going to spin it. We're fine. This is what we want. We don't want to be playing low-level competition right now, especially with seeding. You have to win them. You have to win out no matter what. I don't think it really matters who these opponents are. You get a shot at redemption at Arizona here. You get a shot at the hot BYU, who we'll obviously be talking about in a few minutes here. And then Kansas State, another shot at redemption there. This is going to help with the momentum, the confidence that this team needs. We've seen Nate Heisey absolutely ascend to confidence levels that I don't know if I've ever been picked up by radar before. So that is a positive coming out of this game. But these last 3 games, I actually like. On paper, as it sits right now, it's a great opportunity for this team to build some momentum, build some confidence, much needed confidence going into the Big 12 tournament, and then therefore, obviously, the big one.
I think that Iowa State could afford to lose, or probably needs to lose their first game in the Big 12 tournament. Don't wear yourself out, especially with 7 guys contributing in the game there against Oklahoma State. Is there any reason, if you're the host of Locked On Big 12, or you're a fan of Texas Tech that's listening, or a fan of Baylor, is there any reason to trust Iowa State right now as of late February?
No. Right now, there is absolutely no reason. I don't trust them, and I'm supposed to. This team, as it stands right now, maybe this answer would be different yesterday or like 5 hours ago. I came into this game saying there's going to be no overreactions. This team, it's fine if they lose this game. And now I'm sitting here completely fired up. So unfortunately, I don't know what happened, but I do not trust this team as it sits right now. With Curtis out there doing what he's doing, it's fine. Milan, I do like being out on the floor, and I do like what we've seen from Nate Heisey and Chatfield in recent in memory, I suppose. But no, this team right now is looking a little bit like a day one exit if you get a bad draw, and I don't love that. But this is where you go from, right? There's still basketball yet to be played. So it's okay. We are okay. We have time. But right now, no. Luckily this game was played on a Tuesday against Oklahoma State. They have a mini bye going up into Arizona. Hopefully you get healthy. And I actually like your point. Losing the Big 12 tournament, you're in the tournament at this point. We need rest. Taman is broken. I think it's a thumb, and then the shoulder injury on top of everybody out there is banged up. Are you kidding me? Yeah. No, I actually like that take a lot. This team can turn it around. They have the firepower. They're a great offensive scoring team compared to years past. And defensively, they've been the best of the best. This team can do it. But right now, no, they have not been at that level.
There's a way. These last 3 games are all 3 quad 1 games. There's a way to play yourself back on the 2 line. Do I think Iowa State's in the shape to do that? No. But if you win those 3, even 2 out of 3, you're probably back on that 2 line. And then, especially if you sweep those 3, you can go into the Big 12 tournament, lose, and still be a 2 seed in March. Coming up, BYU, Houston, Arizona, Texas Tech, Iowa State. Who's the best team in the Big 12 right now? This is a Locked On Big 12, Locked On Cyclones crossover. Nick Maravets of Locked On Cyclones. Are the BYU Cougars? I mean, we know Houston's good. Arizona is still good. Iowa State is good. Texas Tech is good. The Big 12 is better ultimately than everyone tried to make you think they were. But as it sits right now, because of depth, because of their ability on the floor to win games, both at home and on the road, do we all of a sudden have to consider BYU as the most dangerous team in this conference?
I'd like to know why you'd pick them to be the most dangerous team. Genuinely, I'll let you have the floor here. And then I'll kind of answer from that because I just want to know what lens you're looking at this from.
I'm looking at it from the lens of you were supposed to immediately say no. Houston is
No,
still very
they
much
are not
better.
even close. That's why you take your shot here. If you want, they are not the best team in the Big 12.
You were very much still supposed to say Houston. I think the Cougars, who have they lost that Texas Tech game and then came back with a fiery rage and have just been on a rampage, really a rampage all season. This may be the greatest regular season Big 12 team of all time, and they just got to the Big 12. The win against Iowa State, the win against Texas Tech, both top 10 games. One of those on the road. Kelvin Sampson did mention they both felt a little, not fraudulent necessarily, but because of how banged up Texas Tech and Iowa State were, he said it, there's an asterisk next to those wins because you have to consider there's still very good Big 12 teams that Houston mowed over. But the Cougars of Houston are number one. I do want to make the case, though, that BYU is the second most dangerous school in the Big 12 right now. And the biggest reason why, and what could ultimately make them better than Houston down the stretch. So this is the same BYU team that lost to them on the road 86-55 earlier this year. What could make BYU better? Coming off of road wins against West Virginia, a 40-point home win against Kansas, a win at Arizona. What could make them better is depth. The Cougars play 10 guys, like consistently 10 guys. And I thought it was the stupidest thing in the world. We're not the NBA. Play 7 people. Play 8 people. That's how you do. That's how you do college basketball. That's how you do any basketball. My intramural team. Play your best 7 guys. You know, this is just the way that we've always done it. BYU said, nope, we have 10 players. We want them to get like stupid equal playing time. And there for a while, I hated it. I wanted it to die. And now, Nick, all of a sudden, BYU seems like the most fresh, consistent, arguably best team in the conference.
Well, and obviously momentum's a real thing. Kansas State coming into Ames, I felt that for real. And these are, Arizona, good team. KU, maybe not the same level they were earlier, but still, I mean, it's Kansas. I can say that with confidence. It is, in fact, Kansas. So
a dead version, but yes, still Kansas.
They still wear Kansas across their chest. So I do think that there is some momentum there. And when a team gets hot, if they're hard to beat, they're hard to beat. And I said before Iowa State faced Houston and before we knew Curtis and Keyshawn weren't going to be playing, there was some shakiness to Houston's wins across the year. Obviously, the buzzer beater against UCF, and you mentioned some of those injuries in there. I do put Houston at the top, and it's really not that close right now. They're playing on another level. But then you look into Arizona and Texas Tech. Where are they at? We just ripped apart Iowa State. Don't love that, but that's what happened. We can't have them in this conversation. And BYU right behind them in standings. Then it's Kansas, who we just said is literally dead. So there are levels to this. I do think BYU is very much in that conversation. Potentially, I love the depth there. That's what Iowa State was. We were very much suffering with that during the 7-game skid where we go 3-4. There's no Milan. Everyone's pushing 40 minutes a game. You could feel it. Okay, that's a real thing. Look at all these teams, Texas Tech, Iowa State against Houston. A lot of injuries there. If BYU can go into this tournament fresh and with momentum, not to say that they're the best team in the Big 12. They're not, but they can be dangerous. They absolutely could.
They could finish out as the second best team in the conference. I know a lot of Arizona fans will complain about the call at the end of the game, and the whistle the Big 12 has gotten all year long has just been finicky. That's kind of the nature of this conference and what happens here. We all have grown to we've all gotten used to it by now. Yep. I worry as I ask the question of the best teams in the Big 12. Again, Houston, Arizona, Texas Tech, still Iowa State, BYU are all the ones that come up. When we talk about teams that might be dead, and I know we mentioned this a bit about Iowa State, does it feel like the Cyclones are in a similar category with Kansas or Baylor as teams that you're just wondering, what's going on and will the sun ever shine again?
I do think it's in that what's going on. I do. But with Iowa State, obviously, the injuries is the big thing right now. So when Keyshawn gets back, I saw a statistic today. I unfortunately don't have it up. But they were 9-0 in games in which Keyshawn shot a free throw, I think was the statistic, because when he drives the lane, that just opens up the offense so much more. Now, I'm sure that Milan was in every single one of those games too, because that means it wasn't during the 7-game stretch. And that's a whole different element to that. But you get this team back to full strength, and I think they're one of the best teams in the Big 12. The question is, who are they? Kansas? Nah, I think they're dead. I don't think that I think they'll show up for their Super Bowl. That is the Cyclones. And they'll show up for a few other games. Bill Self's a great coach. But no, they are not who they once were. And they even earlier this season, I don't think that they're on that level.
The Baylor Bears, TCU Horned Frogs, West Virginia Mountaineers. Lenardi still has West Virginia and Baylor hanging around there in March Madness. He also has a fighter's chance for Cincinnati and TCU. Do you think those Baylor Bears, those West Virginia Mountaineers deserve a spot in March, and that TCU and Cincinnati too could sneak their way in?
Well, I love the Big 12. We've talked, obviously in the first segment about where could the Big 12 be? How can they stick around? I love the just chaos that this conference provides. And we literally just saw it with Iowa State and Oklahoma State. Still not really over it. That being said, I do think that goes both ways, and these teams can provide that level of chaos into the tournament. Do you want that in the tournament? I don't know. You tell me. I do think that these teams are very good. You're playing some of the best basketball competition all year, right? And you're going to have the SEC Big 12 argument. That's fine. SEC's undefeated in imaginary games. I get it. But I just think the Big 12 is better. And so when you're playing better teams, it's a quality loss, right? Isn't that what that would be? I don't know. That's just how I look at it. I'd love to see, and maybe if there's an even number of teams, Big 12, SEC, I don't know how it's all going to play out at the end. I think there could be more Big 12 teams in the Sweet 16. I think that there just is some depth to this conference now. I just got done saying that there's levels to it. I understand that I just said that, but it's levels within levels. Okay. Big 12 versus SEC.
Yeah. I don't hate that because there is a better cushion at the bottom of this league that hasn't usually been there. We don't typically have Arizona State, UCF, Colorado.
Yeah.
And maybe you want to loop in Oklahoma State to that. Sorry. But there are 3, 4, 5 teams at the bottom of the league that are all very beatable if you are a Arizona, a BYU, a Houston at this point. And the Big 12 has never really been known for that. They've been known for a gauntlet every night. That's waned to an extent. And with that, maybe you're more fresh going into March, have a better opportunity to go to the Sweet 16, because we always asked our Big 12 schools too downtrodden, too beaten up after a regular season of this conference. Guess we'll find out this year. Nick, if folks want to find more of your work, where can they go?
At Nick Marvel on Twitter. I stayed pretty quiet tonight, or I guess yesterday, unfortunately, after this Oklahoma State one, but generally covering games there, and then Locked On Cyclones, baby, every day.
You can find Locked On Big 12 at LO Big 12 on Twitter and wherever you find your podcasts with Locked On Big 12. This has been and always will be Locked On, a crossover with Locked On Cyclones. Thanks for making it your first listen every single day. Dose Grande.